Rav Kovaleski. Harav Kovaleski used to eat very, very little. He wasn't a foodie, as they say. He wasn't a guy to run after foods or delicacies or whatever it is. However, there was one thing he loved, and that was his wife's soup. Oh, every time his wife made the soup, he would always eat it. He would always ask for seconds and thirds. And his wife knew that my husband doesn't eat. The only thing he eats is the soup. Beautiful. So how did the story happen? When he was a bahur in yeshiva, he came home one day. It was a Friday afternoon. And his mother said, "Honey, are you hungry?" He said, "No, not really. I don't really eat. At a young age even." She says, "But you know what? I made a soup. Would you like the soup?" He says, "You know what, Mom? For you, I'll try the soup." So she puts him a bowl of soup and he eats it. He says, "Mom, fantastic soup. This is amazing. Do you have more?" Yes, of course I have more. She gives him more soup. And the story went on, soup every Friday until he got married. So his kala, his bride-to-be, she goes to the mother and she says, "What does your son like to eat?" She's not really much of a guy to eat, but I know he loves my soup. Can you please give me the ingredients, the recipe? Of course, here it is. She gives her the recipe, the ingredients, and the wife ends up making the very same soup for the husband his whole life. The husband passes away. At the Shiv'ah, they get a letter. And the letter says like this: "I just owe a debt of gratitude to the niftar." And the wife's reading this: "To your husband that passed away. He was a great man and he actually saved my shalom bayit." And she's reading the letter, and what does the letter say? "I always used to complain that my wife's food was horrible. And I went to the rabbi, your husband that passed away, and I told him, look, my wife, she's not a cook. Let's be honest. She doesn't know how to make food. What am I going to do? And your husband told me this story. He said that when I was a little boy in yeshiva, I came home one Friday afternoon and my mother made soup. And she asked me if I wanted the soup. And I said, Mom, of course, anything for you. And she gave me the soup and it was the worst soup I ever tasted in my life. But I didn't have the heart to tell my mother that it's a horrible soup. Because how could you do this to your mother? And I said, okay, I'll eat the soup until I get married. And then, shalom al the soup. We don't have to eat the soup anymore. To my luck, my wife ended up making the very same soup for my mother because she gave her the ingredients. And my wife made the soup and she gave me the soup. And I didn't have the heart to tell my wife, I hate the soup. So I ate the soup. And I'm telling you, you're complaining about that your wife is a horrible cook. Look, if I was able to close my mouth, to make shalom bayit and not to slight my wife and not to cause her any pain, you could be quiet. That was the end of the letter. And he says, and I want to show you how unbelievable your husband is. He saved my shalom bayit. And the wife's reading this and she's crying. And she said to herself, and she's saying it out loud, actually not to herself, she's saying it out loud by everybody paying shiv'ah. And she says, why did he never tell me he doesn't like the soup? I hated the soup. I hated making the soup. My children hated the soup. Why couldn't he just tell me that he hated the soup? And what's the lesson, ladies and gentlemen? That you could say, I hate the soup, don't make it ever again. And that means your body's controlling. It's what you care about. You care about yourself. Or you could be quiet and taste that horrible soup for years because it's the neshama controlling. Do you care about yourself, which is the goof only? Or is it also the neshama, not to slight other people, not to offend other people, not to make other people cry? What are you caring about in this world? Is it the homer running after the tzura? Or is it the tzura running after the homer?